All right, here is your full guide to drawing abs. Let's get into it. So the first big mistake when drawing abs is not drawing the surrounding muscles around it. So if I go back to some of my childhood art, like this one here with Superman in it, I drew abs like a few balls just floating on the stomach, and it looks really weird because there's nothing around it. You don't see any pecs, delts, obliques, serratus, anything like that. And so it's really weird. But if we go back to the thumbnail that I drew for this video, it looks really, really nice because around the abs right here, you can also see the obliques and the serratus and the pecs and everything else. So you want to make sure you draw everything balanced and it makes sense. So in this video, I will be covering the abs, the obliques, and the serratus. So let's get into that. So any good tutorial basically just tells you what it looks like in an easy to understand, simple way. And one of the best ways to figure out what something looks like is to just trace it. So I'm going to take this photo of the bodybuilder Andre Dieu, and I'm going to draw on top of it, basically tracing it. So I'm going to trace this body in a really simplified way. And this is how I'd start drawing anyway. I'm not going to worry about all the curves and contours or anything like that, just getting the basic idea of the shapes across. All right, look, this is what the basic shape of his body looks like. And now, if I trace the edge of the abs, which is right here and here, and I hide the original photo, you can see that the abs go about halfway down each pec. So you want to make sure you get the width of the abs right to begin with. They go about halfway, or just beyond halfway, like outward, like that way, of each pec. Let's keep tracing. Here at the belly button is where the six-pack ends. So if I draw the end there, you can see that the abs have the six-pack above the belly button right here. And then below the belly button are the stretched out longer abs. And let me tell you what I mean there, because you might be thinking, wait, there's abs beneath the six-pack, and you're right, there. So if I get rid of those lines and we go into a new layer, and I draw a basic sketch of a body, same sort of thing. So let's say this is the simplified shapes of the body. And like we just learned, the abs go just beyond or just at halfway down each pec, like this. It doesn't end here at the waistline or like where you wear your pants at. It actually goes all the way down to the pubic crest down here. But the thing is that if the belly button is like right here, then you'll only have the actual six-pack up here. But then the rest of the abs, which we'll call the 40 ounce, will be down here. And it's usually just 6 at the top and 2 down below. However, you could also have 8 up top and 2 below. Or you could have 4 up top and 2 below. Or you could have 6, 8, or 4 on the top, and then 4 below, but it will be just like a slight indentation on the side like this. For this video, I will just be drawing with 6 up top and 2 below, because that's the most common, and in my opinion is the easiest and most aesthetic to draw. So if we go back to this guy's abs, and we start to trace them, let's see what we can find. And this time we're going to try to go a little bit more of a quality tracing than what I was doing previously. Okay, this is my tracing of his abs. I should probably add a centerline though. And what we can see is the wave they have to them. I can see that down here, they start down low, and then it raises up here, and then stays kind of flat here, and then goes up again there. So it basically makes kind of an S-curve like this. So from the point, you want to make this shape, right? Which I believe is actually a shape on the keyboard. I forgot what it was called though. On different people, it can be exaggerated in different ways. So let me show you the few ways that it can be done. You could have those lines be really jagged and dramatic like that. So the abs would be like that. Or you could have them like short changes like this, like see how it barely goes up and this thing is like flat. Or you could have them be kind of just like curvy like that. It doesn't really matter. You could probably even get by with just going straight across and then up. But the point is how it has some waviness to it. Also, we can see there's some asymmetry, how this ab here is higher than this ab here by a little bit. Now usually when I draw, I don't like to add asymmetry because it looks better symmetrical, and people with symmetrical abs do exist in real life. There's one, I think his name is like Sebastian something, and he's a bodybuilder who's known for his symmetrical abs. Now let's look at this image here. This is the bodybuilder Callum von Mugger. Maybe I'm not pronouncing that right. But anyway, I've colored on top of his physique to show you the two surrounding muscles and how they interact. You can see that he has his obliques here and his serratus here, and they connect in this zigzag pattern. Now, the reason they connect like that is because if I drew a rib cage, so say this was the rib cage and we had the sternum here, then you would have the ribs going this way, right? And let's go with this color. The obliques are going to attach to each rib, and since it needs to attach to each one, it will basically do this to connect to them, because there's all this space in between each rib. And then it will be the same for the serratus. It also needs to connect each one. So it will do this as well. And because of that, it will make this saw-like pattern. So if we take a closer look at this guy's physique, and we analyze his obliques right here, you can see that there's all these lines going there. But down here on the obliques, it's relatively smooth compared to up here. And we like to divide this into two portions because of the difference in how it looks. We call this upper portion the thoracic portion, and this lower portion the flank portion. And basically, for us, that just means that we draw lines through here, and we make it smooth on the bottom. And then you'll see how with the serratus, we really only see 3 of them. Maybe we'll see 4, but usually that's the most you'll ever see. Now I want to show you something about the serratus and how I usually find where to put it. I go to this point here, between the collarbones, and draw that angle. And drawing this angle helps me find the angle of the serratus, and so I can figure out how it connects. So if I've drawn this line and I figured out that angle, then all I have to do is make it interlock with the obliques. Another thing I should mention is how you can draw the upper 2 abs differently. So on this guy, you can see that these upper 2 abs are sloping downward a little bit like that. But then on this guy, his abs are sloping upward a little bit like that. And you can make this even more extreme if you want to. So if we go back to my thumbnail, I decided to make them pretty like just straight across, like this. But you can do whatever you want. So let's go over how I'd actually draw the abs. So let's draw a basic sketch for the body. So here's the head. Now this step here is important. I'm going to find the belly button because the belly button is an important landmark because we know that the 6-pack goes above the belly button and the other 2 abs will go beneath the belly button. And the way I find it is I count 3 heads. So here's the top of his head. I'd go to the chin. That's 1, 2, 3. So the belly button should be about there. Then to finish the ribcage area, I'd draw some angles like this and connect that to the side. Then I'd draw the midsection and make sure to keep it pretty short because there's not much space below the belt. I mean below the belly button until the belt. So let's say this is our basic sketch. We found where the belly button is. Now we're going to find where the edge of the abs go. So it goes just about halfway down the pecs, maybe a little bit outward of that. And now we found those landmarks. And the next thing we can do is we can zoom in and divide this into thirds. And I'm going to make these slope upward a little bit as we go outward. And then for the other ones, we'll just make it go straight across. And then obviously these 2 abs are already defined. The next thing I want to show you is how I find the serratus angle. We just do this angle as I showed earlier. And now we're ready to draw the details. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lower the opacity of this layer, make it light. And then I'm going to make a new layer. And here we can add some of the detail to the abs. So first thing is adding that wave to it. The next thing is adding the center line. And even though it's a straight on shot, I still like to add a little bit of curve to it. Now for these bottom 2 abs, I either try to very lightly define the center line or I just leave it out entirely because these bottom 2 abs that aren't part of the 6-pack are very flat and undefined and usually more of the fat is down there. Alright, now the next thing we're going to do is move outward and we're going to draw the obliques. Now, one of my favorite ways to draw them is to draw them as if they're part of the abs just extending further. So from this point here on the abs, I'm going to go outward and to be more narrow and just make this line that ends where I made that line for the serratus to start. And then I'm going to go down here to the next ab and do the same thing. Then I'm going to go down again and do the same thing. And I make sure to make it symmetrical when I do this. And then from here, we can draw the flank portion, which will be pretty simple. You just draw the edge, maybe add a little bit of curve to it. And if we're drawing below the belt, or it's going to be tight below the belt, you can even continue these lines downward like this. And you could also do the same for these 2 abs here. Next is the serratus. And like we established earlier, all you have to do is make them interlock like this. Now, since this is a straight on shot, you can't really see much of them. And so we're only going to see 2 from this angle. Or maybe I can add 3 by doing this. Yeah. Just like that. And this is a little bit of a stretch, maybe a little bit exaggerated, but I kind of like that. And that's really all there is to drawing the abs, serratus, and obliques. And optionally, you can add the border of the abs there, like this. Sometimes I leave that out. I think I'll leave them out for this drawing. Just for the fun of it and making this look like a finished drawing, I'm going to draw more of the muscle detail around it so it doesn't look so weird. All right, then if I remove the background, it should end up looking like that. Now let's draw it from another angle. Same thing, we're gonna have to draw the basic shape of the body first. All right, that should be all you need to start drawing the abs. And then, first thing is always define the edge of the abs, like this. Then we're going to draw the angle to find the serratus. And this is very important that you do the same angle and make sure it's symmetrical on both sides, even when the body is turned like this, because it can be really tempting to start drawing all the serratus details here. But since he's turned like this, you couldn't even see it. As you can see, this goes past the body because it's curving like this. The serratus is on the other side where we can't see it. So we've already found the belly button by counting 3 heads. Now we divide this into thirds. And this time I think I'm going to make the abs tilt downward this time. And then keep these flat here. Draw those. And now we're ready to start detailing this. So the first thing I'm going to do is draw a curve for the middle and make sure it's clearly seen that these have mass. If I just made it straight down, they would be too flat looking. Now we're going to draw that sort of S shape that I described earlier. And then the same thing for the middle section. And then the same thing down here. And this time I decided to draw the center line for the bottom 2 abs. And now we can put on the obliques. So again, I'm just going to flow out from these abs and make them stop right about there so that I can interlock it with the serratus like this. And on this side, it's going to just have the obliques and not the serratus because of the angle we're viewing it at. So it will look just like that. Let's draw the edge of these abs down here. And sometimes I like to draw a little space right here. I'm not sure if this is anatomically correct, but I think it looks nice to draw that there. Then we can draw the flank portion of the obliques like this. And that's how you draw abs, baby. So we've done front and a 3/4. Now let's do a profile of the abs. Okay, I've drawn in the basic shapes of a profile body. So when doing this, a common mistake is to make the abs too wide because we're used to drawing the abs pretty wide from the front view. But you want to make sure to still, imagine you're going halfway down the pecs like this. And what you'll see is that they're actually going to be very narrow from this view, like that. So you have the belly button down here, and the abs will only take up this small space. Now you're going to find the serratus the same way. You're going to try to draw the same kind of angle from the collarbone, like this. And that should be enough for us to start drawing the abs in detail. So the first thing is to make sure these are divided in a way we like, okay? And then we're going to draw a curve for how they bump out. And still we're going to try to get that sort of S by overlapping it like that, and then going up. Now, we can do the same thing again. We draw the obliques coming out of the abs and going this way toward the serratus. And I try to make sure that these have relatively equal spacing between them, because it will look weird if one of these lines for the obliques is really thick and the other is really thin. Then you interlock them like this. Again, I kind of cap it at like 3 or 4 serratus. 4 might even be too much. And then if we want, we can go down here and we can draw the flank portion of the obliques. They'll be going down there. And we can add a little bit more lines through here if we want. Let's just try to not go overboard with that. Now I want to go over making shadows for the abs. So if we go back to these abs, what I'm going to do is pretend the light is coming from the upper right, kind of like this. And so this ab here is going to cast a shadow downward onto this ab, and this ab, and this ab, like that. And then it's going to have a core shadow on itself because it's curving inward. So what you'll see is you kind of just make a diamond shape in the middle, like that. And then on this edge, it's going to have a core shadow on this ab, and a cast shadow over here onto the obliques or ab, whatever. Then same thing for this one, we're going to have a core shadow on this, and then a cast shadow onto this. And then we'll have a core shadow here, and then a cast shadow down here. And I think we can black all this out. And then we can make a core shadow here, have a cast shadow onto these ones here. Same thing here. And then I like to just thicken up some of the rest of this like that, and use line weight mostly for this. So in the serratus, I might do this to make a little bit more shadow, more depth. And at the bottom of the obliques, I might make it a little bit thicker like that. And that's really all you have to do to shadow them. And then if you really want to be fancy, you can take a tiny brush and do some cross hatching out of them. Obviously with this low pixelation, it doesn't look very good. So with the low pixelation, it doesn't look very good there, but if I show you an example on this flash I'm working on right now, it should look a little bit more like that, which is much more pretty. As for another example, and this time I'm going to show you how to draw a rim light on it, kind of like I did in this Nightwing here, where you can see the light is coming from the upper right, but we can still see that it's lit up on this lower right part, lower left part, which is making a really cool effect. So to do that, all you need to do is light it the same way from one side, but make sure to also define some light areas on the opposite side. On this example, I would make sure to leave this edge of the obliques light like this, and then I'd probably even erase this line, because that will be hit by light, and the line is basically just darkness. And so it will have this shape of light there, and then it'll be the same thing here. I'm going to have a shape for light here, and I'll also erase this line for the same reason. And then it'll be the same thing down here. And then I'm going to make sure to define light for this flank portion of the oblique, like that. And now that all of this has an illuminated area, all I have to do is draw shadows like normal, but just not fill those areas in. So in the end, the lighting on the abs and obliques and serratus should look something like that. I didn't really bother to add any line weights over here or anything, because it's just going to be the same thing. I'm going to darken up areas that should be darker, like right here. But you should get the idea. Basically, light up some things over here, but then do the same exact shadows from that direction. All right, that's all I have for you. If you want even more direct feedback from me personally and to get to my personalized coaching within drawing, you can check the link in the description where all that can happen.